Climate change has led to a drastic change in weather patterns that has led to droughts, storms, floods and other natural disasters. For instance, if we go back to the summer of 2022, Europe witnessed one of its hottest summers in years as people struggled to adapt this rise in temperature. Or we could look at the situation prevailing in the Horn of Africa. Millions of people are struggling to survive in the region as they face one of the worst droughts in decades. The droughts have led to poor agricultural produce that has put millions of people, including children, on the brink of malnutrition, as well as forced them to migrate from their home in search of a better livelihood. So in reality, the clock is ticking. Time is slipping by, despite the fact that global leaders have set ambitious climate goals to combat the climate crisis. The United Nations recently concluded its biodiversity summit in Canada's Montreal, where delegates from scores of nations pledged to protect 30% of the Earth by 2030, along with 23 other targets to protect the biodiversity. While in November, the climate conference, or COP27, was held in Egypt, where scores of nations agreed to lower the rise in global temperature by reducing their emissions, as well as agreeing to making a loss and damage fund that will help the so-called poor and developing nations to combat the wrath of climate change. But are these promises of any use? Greenhouse emissions are still on the rise. Crippling heat waves have become the norm. Global temperatures in 2023 are set to be among the hottest on record, and the Earth's sixth mass extinction has already begun. So where are we headed, and how do we protect ourselves from the crisis which we have created? Well, there is one possible way where we can put pressure on the big polluters to save our planet, and it is climate litigation. Well, to explain to you further, climate litigation is an increasingly common and accessible area of environmental law, which is used to hold countries and public corporations to account for their climate mitigation efforts and historical contributions to the problem of climate change. So it compels governments and corporate actors to pursue more ambitious climate change mitigation and adaptation goals. Now, the litigation also provides a new front of climate action. Citizens aiming to force stronger moves to cut carbon emissions and to win damages to pay the costs of dealing with the impacts of global warming. Now, perhaps the most significant decision in climate litigation in 2021 came from the Netherlands. The Hague District Court ordered Shell to reduce its emissions by 45% by the year 2030, which were relative to the 2019 numbers. Across all activities, including its subsidiaries and both of its own emissions and end-use emissions, the court made its decision to provisionally enforceable, meaning that Shell will be required to meet its reduction obligations even as the case is appealed. So climate litigation has opened a range of possibilities for people to put pressure on the big polluters, and more climate cases are being filed across the globe. Despite filing cases, major victories at the Supreme Court level still appear years off. But experts believe that even wins along the way to the highest court adds to the pressure to bring a change to the harmful practices that are carried out by governments or private companies. WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.